Hi, this is Scott with 4D Tech. Today we are in a 2017 Ford Fusion. This vehicle came Sync 3 equipped but lacks navigation. We will be adding navigation using the 4D Tech Sync 3 Navigation Upgrade Kit. We will need a few basic tools for this process. Phillips and flathead screwdriver, 7mm nut driver, and plastic dash removal tools. To begin disassembly, we need to remove these two vinyl wrapped trim pieces on each side of the console. They simply unsnap outwards. And then same on this side. Once those are unsnapped, there's a 7mm screw on each side of the console that's now exposed. Those need to be removed. With those screws removed, we need to unsnap this top piece of trim off of the center console. The cup holders and shifter knob all stay in place. You'll take your dash removal tool and begin to separate this upper piece of trim from the console. And with all the clips released, we'll remove this piece of trim. There's a single connector here. Push the tab on the one end and slide it out. Just remember anything that you've unplugged during this process so you can plug it back in during the reassembly process. With the center console trim removed, we now need to remove this thin piece of trim that goes all the way around the radio bezel. We'll grab our removal tools and start working the piece of trim off and releasing the tabs. You can pull out on the lower corners and work your way up. And then same on this side. We'll remove that piece of trim and set it out of the way. Now we need to remove this bezel around the screen by taking out these two 7mm screws that are back in here in the lower corners. With those two screws out, we'll pull out on the radio bezel. And there's clips on the side and two clips in these upper corners. The two clips in the upper corners are kind of tough. You'll want to put your hand around the trim like this, get a couple fingers behind it, and just pull out. And then same on this side. Once those clips are removed, we have two connectors to disconnect on the back of the control panel. You push in on the tab on the top of the connector and slide it out. Same with this connector. There's a small tab right here. Push that in and unplug the connector. Now we need to remove the 4 7mm screws around the screen. With those 4 screws out, we slide the screen out to access the APIM on the back of the screen that we will be replacing for this upgrade. We have 3 things we need to disconnect. The USB cable, you push in on the tab at the back edge of the connector and unplug it. The blue connector is the GPS antenna. There's a tab underneath it that you squeeze and use a flat blade to help the connector off of the APIM. The last connector is the main 54-pin connector. This you have to push in the little black lock in front of the gray lever and pull the gray lever towards you all the way to release the connector. Now we need to replace this APIM on the back of the screen with the one from 4D Tech that is navigation equipped. The best place to do this is on your tabletop with the foam that's out of the box to lay it face down on. For the sake of this video, I'm going to lay a cloth in here and set it in place so that you can see what I'm doing. First, we need to push in the little tab on the blue connector and unplug it to unplug the screen cable from the APIM. Next, we need to remove the 3 Phillips screws holding the APIM to the back of the screen. With the 3 screws out, we'll remove the APIM and replace it with the new one from 4D Tech that is navigation equipped. You'll just line back up the screw holes and make sure that your connector for the screen cable is on the same end. With the 3 screws holding the APIM back onto the screen, we just need to reconnect our screen cable by sliding it into the blue connector till it clicks. Now we just need to reassemble in the same order that we took it apart. The 54-pin connector is the most crucial. If it's not fully seated, the unit will not function correctly. You want to start with the lever all the way towards you, push in the connector till the lever starts to move, and then push the lever to draw the connector in the rest of the way till the lever goes past the lock. We'll want to reconnect the black USB cable into the black connector. The light gray connector on the APIM is unused. And then last, the GPS antenna in the upper corner of the APIM. You'll want the connector, the clip on the connector facing down towards the screen cable connector, and push that till it clicks. Now we'll set the screen in place and replace the 4 screws that we took out earlier. With the screen screwed back in, we now need to replace the dash bezel around the screen. We need to remember to plug back in both connectors. Remember the tab facing upwards. Slide the connector in until it clicks into place. Same thing with the second connector with the tab facing upwards. Slide in till it clicks in place. Now we'll set the dash bezel back in place. Push the top clips in, and now we need to replace the 2 screws down in the corners. With all the screws back in place, we'll now replace the thin trim that goes around the bezel and the vents. We just set it into place where we pulled it out earlier and push it in to snap all the connectors in place. Now we need to replace the piece of trim that goes around the cup holders and the shifter knob. Remember to plug back in the connector that you unplugged earlier upon disassembly. Slide it in until it clicks. Line up the trim and push it back into place. Once back into place, we need to replace the 7mm silver screws on each side. With this trim back in place, we need to put our vinyl wrapped pieces of trim back on each side of the console. You'll just line up the clips and snap it back in front to back. And then same on the other side. And now, with the vehicle fully reassembled, you can see as our Sync 3 system loads back up that it will now be navigation equipped. As you see, there's now a nav icon on the screen. And the maps are loading as well. Thank you for watching our video today on how simple it is to upgrade to navigation in your Sync 3 equipped 2017 Ford Fusion. This is Scott with 4D Tech.